Hello, welcome to Cathartic Scene Canada. I'm Kat, and I'm going to walk you through the Public Health Act for Alberta, Canada. This was revised in response to COVAIDS, and everything from this presentation is 100% true. I gathered it from the Act, and you can find the Act on duckduckgo.com, and you can search there just Public Health Act Alberta, and it'll be listed under Queen's Printer. For the first section I want to talk about today is 18.5, and that is immunization schedules. So here it says that a health practitioner who performs an immunization shall comply with the most recent version of an immunization schedule published by the Chief Medical Officer, which would be Dina Henshaw in our case, or Henshaw, or just part of that schedule, and it is listed as mandatory. Next, we have 38, bracket 1 and 3. And I'm not going to read you everything here, but I will read you C. And it says, in the case of a communicable disease, order the immunization or re-immunization of persons who are not then immunized against the disease or who do not have sufficient other evidence of immunity. And I just want to, side note, say that it's really hard to prove that you have immunity to a disease unless you do like a bunch of testing, and I'm not even sure it would be reliable testing. Continue. Bracket 3. Where a person refuses to be immunized, pursuant to an order of the Lieutenant Governor in Council, the person shall be subject to this part with respect to the disease concerned as if the person were proven to be infected with the disease. So if you say no to an immunization, you are now considered sick within disease. Okay, continue. This one just gets me a little upset. So recalcitrant patients. Recalcitrant means you're stubborn, difficult to deal with. Also means decomposing extremely slowly. And I feel like that's my soul sometimes. All right. Issue of Certificate 39, bracket 1. Where a physician, community health nurse, midwife, or nurse practitioner knows or has reason to believe that a person is infected with a disease prescribed in the regulations for the purposes of this section and refuses or neglects to submit to a medical examination for the purpose of ascertaining whether you're infected with disease, or refuses or neglects to submit to a medical, surgical, or other remedial treatment that is prescribed by a doctor in order to render person non-infectious. So I find that to be scary. As you know, surgery is a life-endangering procedure. There is always chance of death. And for you to be told by a doctor you need to submit to this procedure of me cutting into you seems like the biggest violation of human rights, to be honest. And certificate here, the issue of the certificate is just meaning like that you have to do it. Like this is compulsory examination and treatment. And they mentioned that a couple times throughout this whole act. So a certificate, they just try to make it sound more flowery and good, but they're actually not. So I'm not going to read you the entire thing. You can read yourself, but 41 bracket A bracket, or 40 bracket 1 bracket A talks about peace officer being able to bring a person who's infected to a facility. Yeah. B says a physician to perform any test or physical examination required to determine whether that person has a disease and to detain that person at that facility for the period required to obtain the result of the exam. For any physician to treat or prescribe treatment for that person in order to render that person non-infectious with or without the consent of the person, and detain the person for that purpose. Next. What just happened? Oh. Okay. I don't know what just happened. I just went to the very end of my presentation. Okay. I must have clicked the wrong button. Here we go. State of public health emergency. And here it just says like whether a public emergency exists or may exist. So that's how they've been able to keep up the charade the entire summer. 52.6 bracket 1 talks about how the government can acquire or use any real personal property. Authorize the conscription or draft of any person needed to meet an emergency. Authorize the entry into a building or on any land without a warrant by any person. And a person is just a person, obviously is an entity that is independent with legal rights, and that's just a legal definition down there. And you're not considered a person until you are born alive, because fetuses in Canada do not have rights. And you're not a human until you're born. Apparently, that's what they say. Anyways. Nuisance is defined as a condition that is or might become injurious or dangerous to the public health, or that might hinder in any manner the prevention or suppression of the disease. I think when they're talking about nuisance, they're talking about a condition a person has. So a person is being a nuisance. And when I think of nuisances, I think of pests. So it's very nice that the government is calling me a nuisance. I'm smiling and being sarcastic. So they can inspect your private place where an executive officer believes on reasonable and probable grounds that a nuisance exists. And they can enter the place, take samples of food, perform tests, take photos, make recordings. Yikes. And here are some regulations. I'm not going to read all of them, but a carrier in this sense is a person who is asymptomatic, and generally people who are asymptomatic do not have the ability to spread the disease. But they keep going here, talking about isolation and destruction of property in reference to section 29 bracket 2, and I have that on the next slide. But here this is one that concerns me. They talk about putting an agent into the eyes of a newborn child. So if you don't know, like sometimes after a baby is born, nurses will put antibiotic cream in the eyes because some women have diseases and being born can infect their eyes. But sometimes they do it to a completely healthy woman and her baby. And yeah, apparently here they can just put an agent in the eyes of a newborn. Like, that's just messed up. Anyways, and then they talk about removal of nuisances, so removal of people, prevention of it. And they talk about immunization in the V sections here. They also mention adverse events following an immunization. So clearly, we know, according to this document, that adverse effects happen after immunization. And I've met people who have had adverse effects from being vaccinated. (29) bracket 1 is about isolation and quarantine. And it just mentions that they do an investigation to confirm that you have the disease, and then they can carry out measures in this act how they deem fit. And these are the steps that they can take. So suppress the disease who have it, people who have it, protect those who don't have it, break the chain of transmission, remove the source of infection. So maybe that means move the person from their house, you know, how they said they convey you to a place for a facility. They said that in an earlier section. So this relates to that. So they can prohibit you from attending school, engaging in your work, contact with any person or class of persons. I don't know what class of persons mean, for any period that you are able to transmit an infectious disease. They can also destroy your clothing and articles. And contamination is just a quick thing here. They also mention that they can destroy your food. Like it says here, contamination substance including food. And earlier they said they can destroy contaminated articles. So that, I would rather eat contaminated food than starve. All right, like, why are you destroying food? I find that highly unethical. Like, God made food for us to eat. Anyways, next. This one got me like, what? What does this have to do with anything? Intoxicating gas or vapor. And they mention how this intoxicating vapor is any gas, fume, or liquid that's emitted or given off in a produced, regulated manner. I'm not sure why they add that, and that just got my intuition going, so I added that in here. You can think what you want about it. But first thing it mentioned, it reminded me of, was gas chambers. Next. This is a human rights violation, largest violation since World War II. And it is legal to mandate vaccines without exemptions. This is all from Vaccine Choice Canada. And this Public Health Act actually contravenes the Nuremberg Code of 1947. So they are breaking international law. And I just love feeling that I live in a place that disrespects international law. And in Canada, there's no compensation program if you get injured by a vaccine. So spread the word, send this to your friends, your colleagues, if you know nurses or police officers. That might be valuable to send this to them as well, just so they know, because this is coming and they, under oath, or not under oath, but under their established employer, they are supposed to do this. They're supposed to follow orders. And maybe if they find out this beforehand, they can, you know, protect us instead of, you know, harming us. And I love this quote from Brave New World. It's a book, and I think they made a TV show on it. The plot seems very interesting. So, a really efficient totalitarian state would be one in which the all-powerful executive of political bosses and their army of managers control a population of slaves who do not have to be coerced because they love their servitude. It's a good quote. So thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because I'll be releasing other videos soon. Thank you so much. Have a blessed day.